Okay, so we decided to email people from a lot of different research areas.
Geography, anthropology, art, fine art, and history art. Oh, and some engineering professors as well. So, like, I guess we maybe say a little bit about why we chose them. So, I was very interested in interviewing people from the engineering department, mostly because I'm into engineering. But also because they've got some really interesting research in terms of some social aspects as well. So, maybe I thought it would be interesting to see how a more scientific methodology would combine to give maybe information and data on more quantitative subjects. So, that's kind of why I wanted to do engineering. And I was particularly interested in the art side. So, I've done the methodology drawing course. So, I was really interested to find out more about my professor and how she conducts her work, because she works with materials. She investigates properties of materials, so chemistry, geology, and then that informs her actual art at the end. So that was really interesting way of working, and how she might combine both science research and arts.
I sort of went in for the anthropology approach because that combines sort of psychology, evolution, biology, and yeah, I thought that was a really good mix.
Yeah, because it kind of draws the fine art closer to engineering, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good sort of bridge between the two. So we've got a really broad mix. So hopefully, if we get replies from them, it'll work out fine.
Okay, so the second thing we did is we kind of thought it'd be a good idea to introduce maybe some preliminary themes. It doesn't mean that we don't know if in the future we'll end up writing on the themes specifically, but to kind of direct our questions in that sort of general area. So we were thinking of doing ethics and interdisciplinarity a lot because of the way that we kind of linked the engineering, the anthropology, the fine art.
Yeah, so under interdisciplinarity, we thought we could ask them about sort of how, like what boundaries they think they cross with their work, and maybe if they say, you know, loads of them, that'll be interesting, maybe ones we haven't thought of, but also we could look at their work beforehand, come in with an idea of what we think they might be looking at, and see how it differs from what they actually think themselves. And also if they find that, maybe for anthropology particularly, like if they're trying to cater for multiple disciplines' expectations of research styles, and if that's actually limiting in their research at all.
There's also no in geography. I think one of the case studies that we were looking at, one of the professors had been researching into migration in times of crisis, so refugees and that sort of thing. So I think maybe professors or people in that sort of area might have, I don't know, I guess we'll see, might have more reservations in terms of, you know, the boundary with ethics and whether it's okay to gather scientific data and kind of compromise that and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and also if they're allowed to use data from certain countries as well, if the countries stop them from using information that might be valuable to their studies, and how that's affected it as well. And under methodologies, that's just obviously their style of research, how much they plan to start with, and if maybe when they're doing the research, so say for ethnography in particular, does that, when they're in the field, maybe for a long period of time, do they actually find that they might be better researching something else from what they found so far?
Looking at the methodologies through interdisciplinarity will also be quite interesting, because, for example, the person you were talking about approaches fine art through science, and so that would be quite interesting to explore and interview them.
One of the people we're hoping to interview also on their actual page stated that they take a very interdisciplinary approach, which is interesting because it was underneath, like, I think a set department, and on the page it clearly said, like, we don't take it one way, because if not you're kind of limiting the scope.
What problems did you face?
I think one major problem is just getting the professors, or waiting on the professors and the PhD students or the people we want to interview to actually respond to emails, because we've sent off the emails now a couple of days ago, and we've gotten from maybe the 6 or 7 that we emailed, we've gotten 2 responses. The 5, we're kind of in a state of we don't really know where we're at, in that we don't know if we should wait on them to respond. Maybe they'll respond over the weekend, maybe they'll respond on Monday, but what do we do? Do we email more people? Do we wait on them? It's kind of a bit annoying in that we don't really know what to do.
So Grace, what do you think?
Yeah, another thing that's been a bit of a problem is like the location as well, because in our email we said at a place and time convenient to you, and we've had one response saying that they kind of want to do the interview in their studio in North London, and as great as that would be to have, you know, an interview in their workspace and everything, like, it's going to cost us. Are we okay to make that sacrifice of money and the distance and the time it's going to take? It's just like, are we okay to make that kind of sacrifice just for an interview at all? And are we going to go back and ask the professor to compromise? Are we going to abandon it? And yeah, just thinking through that kind of problem.
Jumping off from time, we've also got those kind of schedule clashes. So say they want to do like during the day when we all have classes, it'll be kind of again, do we want to sacrifice our class time for an interview, which
Not only that, but I mean, if one of us is free, they can't really conduct the interview on their own. There needs to be two of us. I think we're quite a small group as far as it goes. There's only 4 of us. So finding a time that at least 2 of us are free is actually quite difficult. We all do really different things. So.
And also, like, meeting the deadline to have the interviews done by, if the professors aren't free for a whole entire week at all, and they're free for, like, the last day, are we okay to do it on the last day and then have to stay up all night maybe typing up the transcript afterwards?
Yeah. So far, those are the problems.
Yeah.
From an interview with Krista Sensjoy, who is in linguistics and psychology department, and that interview went really, really well. We actually got the email from her saying that she was available on the day, so we had to sort of rush off really quickly, but it was quite a relief because deadlines are looming and we didn't actually have an interview yet, so this was really, really good. It wasn't a department we were originally looking at, so now the worry is that we're going to get replies from people that are of like similar departments. We won't be able to stick with our aim of having like a broad range, but we've just got to see what we can get now. In terms of the interview, we managed to get through all the themes we wanted to, so ethics, interdisciplinarity and methodologies, and it was quite surprising really, because I thought, because her research is on children and especially children with Asperger's, and I thought there was going to be loads of ethical considerations in her work and everything, but actually she was saying because she's just working with language, there's not that many ethical boundaries that like stopped her from doing anything, so that was one really surprising thing from the interview. Another one is that's actually interdisciplinarity, because she was saying in linguistics there are 2 definite fields. Well, there's a big divide between the science side and the sort of humanities side of conducting linguistic research, and she's definitely on the science side. And she was saying that when she publishes her research, she has to only go for journals that think like she does. So that was really fascinating, so it'll be interesting to see how that compares to the ones we've got coming up.
Had our second interview is with a professor from the physics department. He was super nice and super flexible, so he told us, whenever you have time, come in. And so that was really good because it was not as stressful as Grace told me our last interview was. It wasn't rushing off and kind of dropping everything, so we kind of managed to arrange around schedule, which was really, really good. And he was super friendly. One thing that was super interesting was actually going into the themes that we decided on. So in terms of ethics, which I had a little bit of trouble seeing how ethics could work with physics. Actually, one of his projects got stopped by ethics, like he was not able to actually do anything or start the research project because of these ethics. So it's going to be, I think, really good to analyze that and see how it compares maybe to the linguistics person that we interviewed before. So yeah, that was the interview.
We just had our 3rd and last interview with Laura Allen from the Department of Architecture at the Bartlett. We were sort of kind of rushing to find a 3rd interview actually, because the fine art professor that we wanted to interview kind of couldn't do it within the time frame that we wanted to interview our 3 people. So yeah, it was really good that we got the slightly arty architecture lecturer in to talk to us. One interesting thing was when we were discussing sort of research methods, we thought that the research methods would sort of be split into sort of quantitative and qualitative, but it wasn't actually. It was sort of a merged thing in itself, I guess. And kind of she said that during the kind of research process, obviously architects, they do kind of a lot of drawing. But that isn't presented at the end, because what's required from kind of UCL is a set kind of written kind of research summary, as opposed to all these kind of fragmented but kind of together bits. Ethics didn't play much of a role, she said, partially because most of the research projects that she kind of planned and completed wouldn't be built in the end. she said so. Yeah, that was interesting.
We've now done all 3 interviews, and luckily somehow the 3 that replied first after our sort of maths like email send out panic were really, really diverse, really, really good. They answered all of our questions. We managed to cover all the themes. They gave some really interesting, surprising answers that are going to be really good to compare in our report over reading week. So overall, we managed to get, I think, some really
Quite
good
lucky,
content.
yeah, quite lucky, I think, with who we got. Even though they're not the people we initially thought of, they were very diverse, and each person managed to answer a really big question on the themes that we wanted to tackle. So we're super happy about that, I'd say, yeah.
I think in terms of the reflection on the challenges we faced overall, obviously the beginning was quite a panic and actually getting some interviews.
Time management.
Which
Ended up being quite nice in the end. Like we ended up being able to have free time and still manage to do the interviews quite comfortably.
And we could actually accept their time slots. We didn't have to say, oh sorry, can we do a different time, can we do a different location? We could,
yeah, that was super lucky,
which was nice, you know, it sort of made it some more smooth for them.
And they did leave us with like an extra few days to transcribe, so we had a comfortable amount of time.
Well, transcribing was another event in itself. I think for me, what I'd say about the transcribing, other than it, you know, it took quite a lot of time to get it down and to actually get properly what the person had said, what the professor had said. For me, one of the professors spoke quite softly, so when I was playing it back, sometimes I had to rewind quite a few times just to try to understand what he'd said, because the dictaphone did pick it up, but it was quite soft, and so sometimes it was hard to hear. But it ended up going well, and I think the transcript is fine now.
Yeah, even with one of mine, the professor, she was foreign, so she kept sort of like starting a sentence and then maybe going back and changing her words, or maybe not quite making sense. So that was tricky, but you know, good to like practice transcribing and trying to work out exactly what she meant and simplify it with keeping true to the actual text, like what she was saying to start with. How do you find yours?
My interview, she was actually really clear, so I was quite lucky with the transcribing. Like Ivan's doing half the transcribing as well. But yeah, no, she was really clear. I guess one of the things I sort of stumbled over was what bits to sort of cut out, what bits to sort of edit out that weren't really part of the interview.
Weren't relevant.
I think on reflection of the actual interviewing sort of technique and everything, the whole process, because I went to actually all 3 just because it worked with timings, and I really enjoyed interviewing, I found out. But I think that the first one we sort of just went in and she didn't really know much about arts and sciences because we didn't explain that much in the email. And so for the second one we made sure that we explained arts and sciences and the course to start with. And then I realised for the third one we also needed to do is go in and explain to them the style of questions we would be asking to start with, so they just have an idea, which is nice for them, so they're not just being you know, surprised when they're also being recorded, just to be polite. But they answered all the questions, so it was fine, but it's just learning from that. So when I do another interview in the future, they can sort of use that technique.
Yeah, I think you did that in the third interview.
Yeah.
Kind of explaining that at the beginning, and it did go really smoothly, because she knew what was coming and she knew to not talk too long.
Yeah,
so I'd say all in all, it was kind of stressful at times. It was a bit panicky when we didn't have responses, but I think it went really, really well, and I think it was a good intro to kind of learning how to interview people, learning how to approach people, how to, you know, kind of get responses that fit with what you're looking for, so not just ask any question. So it was really interesting, and it was definitely a good experience, I'd say.